Hello everyone, welcome to the last part of this particular series where we were making a to-do app. So till now what we have done is we have created a design using Figma. So in the first video, then we converted that into HTML and a CSS design in the second video. And in the third video, we made it work with the help of JavaScript. And now you can see right now I can check or uncheck any of the items, and we can add new items also, so that gets added to the end. And but if I refresh it, everything vanishes and goes back to the state it was in the beginning. Okay, so what I want to do this in this video is to persist all the data into the local storage. Okay, so let's see what all changes we will have to do to convert our current code to persist, to make it persistent. Okay, to persist the data. So let's now, before we go ahead and do that, I found a little bit of problems with the current design. Okay, so we will quickly resolve that, and then we will go ahead and do the remaining things. Okay, so the first thing that I found was this particular to-do title. No, all these items over here are aligned left, but the to-do title is aligned center. So let's correct that in the CSS. So let's come to the CSS and let's select, let's go down and so here we are selecting the specific child. So now we can select any child we want with the help of nth child and give the number, column number over here. So we want to target the second column. And here I just want to do text align left. Okay, and once that is done, now this is how it looks. Okay, so this is clear. Next problem that I found was if I do something over here, let's say I add some content and press enter, obviously it gets added. But if I leave it blank and if I press enter, even the blank entries are added. Okay, so we want to solve that. So let's go to our JavaScript file, and over here in the add option. Okay, so whenever I want to do an add to do item, okay, so in the function we can, so this is the function that runs, right? So here we can simply do one thing. So instead of directly running this code, we will first do an if condition. Okay, so let's do an if title is equal to empty. So if the title is empty, I will do a return. Okay, so I will simply do a return. And now if I come and enter some data, and now if I add an empty string, nothing actually happens. Okay, so I am pressing my enter key, but nothing is happening. Even if I press the button, nothing actually happens. Okay, but if I do something over here and if I press the button, that gets added. Okay, so till here everything is fine. Now the next thing that I want to see is again a CSS problem. You can see this outline. The button has an outline, so I don't want that. So let's go to our CSS and go to the styling, button styling, right? And let's make the outline none. And now I don't have that outline in that. And also if you look at there, the pointer does not change. Okay, so I want to change the cursor to pointer. Okay, and now if I go, you can see now I get a nice little click pointer. Okay, And the last thing that I would like to do is, you can see this particular thing, that is the status message is not yet getting updated. Okay, so we want to update that also. So let's take care of that. So we can go to JavaScript file and create a new function. Let's call it let's make a new function. Let's call it calculate to do complete. Okay, so let's call it something like this: calculate to do completion. Or let us make it a little simple: calculate to do status. Okay, so let's call it calculates to do status. Now when this function runs, I'm going to select all the checkboxes and find out how many are checked. Okay, so that will be one way of doing it. And another way would be, in this particular course, when we start persisting the data, there we will have a better option of doing this. But let me show you how we can do it without that. So we have to first select all the buttons. Okay, so let's say let buttons. Okay, so all the buttons, sorry, it's not buttons, it check boxes. Okay, so we are going to select all the check boxes, and the check boxes we have to select from the T body. Okay, so from the HTML body, we can use this particular selector. Okay, so in this selector, I want to go to table T body, and inside that I want to select input. Okay, so there is one input which is going to be which is what I want to check. And if you want, you can add a attribute also. So you want to specifically target a particular uh, type of input, then you can do type. Okay, type equal to, let's say, checkbox. Okay, now I want double quotes over here, right? So I can either escape it, or I can just change this to single quotes. That will make it work. Okay, that's it. So this gives me the all the checkboxes. Okay, now the next thing that I want to do is run a for loop. Okay, so for let checkbox of checkbox. Okay, so checkboxes. So I'm going to now iterate over each of the checkboxes. Okay, sorry, I forgot to make this query selector all. Okay, so when you do query selector, you are just returning one particular element. Okay, so that means only the first checkbox will be returned. But if you want to return all the checkboxes, you have to do query selector all. Okay, now that means this will be all the checkboxes that are there. Now I'm trying to iterate over each checkbox. Now here I'm going to assign few variables. So let's say, let's call it total equal to 0. So initially let us say total is 0, then let complete is equal to 0, and pending will be total minus complete. Okay, so we don't need to have a variable for that. Now next we are going to check each and every checkbox. Okay, so whenever there is a checkbox, that means the total should be added. Okay, so there is one checkbox, so the total has to be added. So I can say total plus plus. So the first thing is I'm adding the total, incrementing the total. Then I want to find whether that particular checkbox is checked or not. If it is checked, that means it is complete. Okay, so let's do an if and let's check. So checkbox dot checked. If that particular checkbox is checked, then I am just going to do complete plus plus, so that task is completed. Else I don't have to do anything. And finally, when all the for loop is complete, now I can do another query selector to select this particular element. Okay, so now we have to find out how we can select that element. So that element will be to do table small. Okay, so that is my uh, so let us create a variable called status, which is going to be document dot query selector, and inside that there will be dot to do table and small. Okay, and here I just have to say that status dot inner html is equal to, now I'm going to simply use backticks here. Okay, and inside this backticks I'm going to find out what exactly I'm going to run. Okay, so let's say let's copy this entire thing from here and paste it over here, and instead of these things I'm going to replace it with the variable names. Okay, so dollar, this will be total, then this will be again dollar, this will be complete, and this will be dollar, and this will be again total minus complete. Okay, so let's see if this works. Now obviously this is a function, so it will not work unless it is called. So let's copy this, and at the end, once everything is done, we can call it in the beginning. Okay, once the code is executed, I can call it so that the initial status is recorded, and then let us save it. Now you can see it correctly says that there are 4 total. So initial, let's in fact that was the correct, so let's make it something different. Okay, so let's say 12, 12 and 32. Okay, so this is, let's make it current. So even if I make it something completely wrong, it still gives me the correct reading. Okay, now when I click on this and mark it as complete, you can see that does not reflect over here. Okay, the reason is whenever I click, I have to run that function again. Okay, so let's go back to main.js. I have to run this function whenever the status changes. Okay, so we have this particular element. Okay, so because of this we are doing, you know, the we are marking the tr complete or incomplete, right? So after all these things are done, we should run this function again so that, you know, everything reflects. Okay, so now you can see if I select one, you can see 2 are complete and 2 are pending. Again, if I select, now it says 3 complete and 1 pending. Okay, so it's working perfectly now. But if I add something, okay, let's add one more. So now it says still 4 total, 3 complete, whereas there are 5 elements. Okay, so you can see that again whenever we do an add item. Okay, so whenever we do add to do item, so you can see this is our listener, right? So after this, whenever I do add to do item, I have to again call our calculate to do status, because whenever there is a change, I will have to calculate the status again. Okay, so now let's come back and add a new task. Now you can see immediately after adding, this becomes 5 total, 1 complete and 4 pending. Okay, now let's suppose once this is done, if I try to remove one of them. Okay, so when I remove it, right now there are only 4 elements, right? but then this is not reflecting. So that means there is one more function, if you remember, the double click function. So this again has to be, uh, you have to, after removing it, so whenever that particular tr gets removed, I have to call that function again to calculate the status. Okay, so now if I refresh, and now if I remove, let's say I remove drink milk, and now it reflects perfectly. Okay, so now all these things are working. And is there anything left to do? So I can add any number of data, and you can see it works perfectly. Now one more thing, you can see now what message, when everything is complete, you can see what message I get is 5 total, 5 complete, and 0 pending. Okay, I would like to change that message, and just for fun, I will add an if statement over here, and I will do if total is equal to complete. Okay, so if total and complete are equal, then I would be showing a different message, else I would be showing a different message. Okay, so if the total and the, that means if all the statements are complete, I'm going to say congratulations, all tasks completed. Okay, so let's try it out. So once I select all the tasks, it says congratulations, all tasks completed. And if I add a new element, now it goes back to 1 complete and 4 pending. Okay, so here I think there is some problem. Let's try it out, what is going wrong over here. Okay, so if I make everything complete and then add a new task, so everything, all the checkboxes are cleared. Okay, so something is going wrong. Let's add something. Let's add few tasks and then add another. Okay, so whenever I'm adding a new task, something is going wrong. So the state of the checkbox is getting cleared. Okay, so let's figure out. I figured out that whenever we add a to-do item with the help of this particular function, because we are uh, using, updating the inner HTML directly of the HTML body, the entire content is getting rewritten. Okay, so when we rewrite the entire HTML, basically we are re-rendering all the checkboxes, right? So when we do that, uh, we are basically losing the whatever we have checked. Okay, so we need to somehow save that state. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I have just found a small uh, trick that you can do is, now if you look at the calculate to do status, so this is running all the time. So if you look at it over here, we are checking whether the checkbox is checked or not. Okay, and we are doing complete plus plus. After that is done, we can actually take that checkbox and we can set the attribute of checked to an empty string. Okay, so what this does is it will set it will take that checkbox, and if that checkbox is checked, it will actually set that attribute checked in that. Okay, so when we do that, now let us try to select some of the checkboxes, and if I try to add new elements, you can see now the checkboxes are still there. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. Another way would be to not use this particular way of creating elements. Instead, you should use the create element function to create new elements. Okay, so in that way, the entire DOM is not re-rendered, so your state of your checkboxes will be preserved. Okay, okay, so I think that was it for the optimization that was needed to be done. Now we can move on to making the data persistent. Okay, so now to make this data persistent, we will have to think in a slightly different way. Okay, now to see uh, how to use local storages. Okay, so let me just first show you how you can use the local storage. So now before we begin, I would like to quickly show you how you can use local storage. Okay, so let me go to the top and let's set some value inside local storage. Okay, so let's use the local storage dot set item. Okay, now in this set item, now this local storage stores value in the form of key value pairs. So it cannot it can only store strings. Okay, it cannot store objects or it cannot store arrays. Okay, so that is not possible unless you convert it into a JSON string. Okay, so let's set a value, name. Okay, and let that value be John. Okay, so I have set this value. Let's save it, and nothing exactly happens. Now if I open the console, sorry, not the console, if I go to memory, uh, sorry, in the application tab, you can go to the local storage section and open it, and you will find that there is a value called name John. Okay, now let's do one thing and see if it is actually preserved. Let me just comment this line out and now save it, right? And let's try to console.log and let's find out what is stored in that name. Okay, so for that the command is get item, and here it will just accept the key. Okay, so the key is name. So you can see the key is name and the value is John. Okay, so in the get item I'm providing the key, so in the console it should provide me the value. Okay, so let's find out. So you can see it provides me with John. Okay, so once we know how this thing is done, let me show you one more thing about local storage. So now I cannot store a object or an array into the local storage. Okay, but there is a small trick that you can use to store uh, an object or an array. Okay, so the way you do it is let's define an object. Okay, so names, the same is applicable for this also. Okay, that is arrays also. Okay, so let's call it John, and then I will say name to another object which is going to be Johnny. Okay, so I have two names. Now I want to save this inside my local storage. Okay, so let's see if that can be stored. So obviously I cannot store it directly because it is expecting a string, but I am having an object. Okay, so but what you can do is you can use something called as Json dot Stringify. Okay, so this command, what it does is it takes any type of input and converts it into a string, JSON string. Okay, so let's give names, and now if I save it, okay, so once I save it, nothing actually happens. Let's inspect, go to memory, sorry, application, and check, and you can see still there is something called as name, and it is having a string. Okay, so it is converted into a JSON and stored as a string. Okay, now I want to get that data back. Okay, so let's suppose I want to get that data back, so I can just do I have already written the code for that, and you can see this is what I get, but it's a string. Okay, I don't want a string to be returned, I want the original object back. Okay, so for that, all you have to do is, after this uh, particular element or command, after getting this string, you just have to send it through JSON again, json dot parse. Okay, so once you do that and give the string, what you get will be the array. Okay, so you can see you get the object. Okay, so whatever you gave, the same thing you are getting back. Okay, so name 1, name 2, John and Johnny. Okay, so these two tricks you should understand to, so that we can proceed with the next part. uh, so to how to persist this particular thing. Okay, so now let's see how we can persist. Now the first step would be, right now we are saving everything in the DOM itself. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. So instead of that, what we're going to do is we are going to have a variable, an array, which will be storing all these things that are there. Okay, so we are going to use that. So let's create, let todos is equal to, now it's going to be an array, and it's going to be an array of objects. Okay, so if it's an array of objects, it will be something like this. Okay, and it will have two things. First of all, it will have a title, to do title. So that title is going to be exactly what is mentioned over here. Okay, so let's copy that title, and there should be a status. What is the current status? So it can be complete or pending. Okay, so we can call it as complete or pending. Okay, so we will make some things pending and some things complete. So let it be same as the way it is seen over here. Okay, so the first one is pending, then we will add a comma, and let's duplicate it few more times, and now I can just take, sorry, I will just take the breakfast, lunch, and sleep. Okay, so these four things I will take from there and paste it over here, and the lunch part is complete. Okay, so we have this now, so our object is ready. So now instead of hard coding everything inside the form itself, now we are going to uh, use this particular element to populate this particular array to populate our form. Okay, so let's create a function now to do that. Okay, so the way we have written this function, we have to write another function. Let's call it render to do. Okay, so let's call it render to do. So all this does is it is going to read this, iterate over all the elements that are inside this, and store append it to the end of the body. Okay, so let's do a simple for loop for let to do of to do's. Okay, and when I get one to do, I am going to run html body dot inner html. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first set the inner html to a blank string so that we can start empty. Then inside this I'm going to append the string, that is this string. Okay, and so I'm going to append that string over here. So now based on what is the status, I'm going to change the text. So I know I have a to do dot title and to do dot status in the object. So this, instead of title, it will be now to do dot title. Okay, because I'm taking one to do at a time from the to do's array. Okay, so it will be to do dot title, and next will be the pending and the complete part. Okay, so for that we are going to do a simple checking. Okay, so let's do, now in this case we will not be needing much, so I will just do to do dot status, and that should bring that over here. Then next thing that I want is I want to add a checked flag over here if the status is complete. Okay, so let's add one more parameter over here, and here I'm going to use a ternary operator, so which is going to check the to do status. Okay, so to do status, if it is equal to complete. If the to do status is complete, I am going to add the string checked. Okay, else I'm going to add an empty string. Okay, so this is what it's going to be, and the same thing I'm going to do for the tr also. So the tr also has a complete class if it is complete. Okay, so I think that is it. So now the only thing left to do is to call the function. So I will just call this function render to do, and I will save it, and let's come here and just comment out everything from the HTML so that there is nothing coming from here. Okay, so everything is commented. Now save it. After I save it, still I'm getting everything, okay, as per our conditions. Okay, but it is getting checked, but the style is not getting applied. Let's see what is wrong. So yeah, so I forgot one thing. I have to go back to my main.js. It is not this. Okay, so cut, it should be class, and inside that this complete class has to be applied. Okay, so that was my mistake. So you can see this is working perfectly now. Okay, so now our things are working. Now if I do this, it still works, but you know, it is not using our array. Okay, so if we try to do a render to do, it will not work. Okay, so the reason why it will not work is, let's come to add to do item. Okay, now in the add to do item, what we are doing is we are trying to do the same thing here also, but we don't want to do that. All we have to do is, instead of directly manipulating the DOM, we only have to do one thing, that is add this to the uh, to-dos array. Okay, so let's get the to-dos array and do a push, and inside push we will be pushing a new object. The object will have title, and this title is going to be title, that is the title that is coming from here. Okay, so the first title is the key and the second title is the value that is coming from here. Okay, so in ES6, if both of them are same, you don't have to repeat it twice. You can just say one, tell it once. Okay, and the status is always going to be pending for a uh, new task. It is always going to be pending. Okay, so once this is done, that will update our to-dos array. Okay, but that will not update the form, because the form is updated whenever you call this render to do function. Okay, so whenever you add a new to do item, the same way we calculated to do status, the same way we will have to uh, render the to dos also. Okay, let's take it a little up. Okay, so we will be doing render to do also, and let's save it. And now let's add some things, and now still it works, everything works perfectly. And now next step is, again, let's come down over here, and now here we are checking if the particular element is checked or not, and if it is checked, we are again manipulating the DOM directly. Okay, so again, because we have an object, so we don't have to manipulate uh, any particular DOM directly, right? But now here the problem is that whenever we here in this case, we could have easily gone to the parent node with the help of this particular command, right? But in our case, if we do not want to use this, so basically we cannot use this. Okay, because we are having an object, to do's object, so we cannot directly we do not want to directly manipulate the DOM. Okay, so we have to change the the ID, the status of the object directly. Okay, so let's suppose let me just refresh, and let's suppose I try to click this. Okay, so if I click this, that means the first object has to be made complete. Okay, so I have to come here somehow to the first object and do make it pending as complete. Okay, now for this, right now there is no way of identifying which particular element I want to check. Okay, so now there are multiple ways of handling this also, but uh, the best way would be to add an ID to the elements, right? So uh, we can add an ID to this. So let's add an ID. The key will be the ID. So let's come down, and we can see the checkbox, right? So we have the checkbox over here. So this is the checkbox, and right now the ID tag is empty. Okay, so we can have an ID over here, or we can have a specific name over here. Okay, so something we can add. Uh, so for doing that, we need to get the key of the particular element. Right now, to get the key, so we want to get the keys also. So in we have to some way introduce the key inside the checkbox. Okay, so for that we have to get the key, but currently I'm not getting the key from here. So what I can do is, let's change the for off loop to for each loop. Okay. And so that will give me to do comma, let's say I for the index. Okay. So this syntax gives me the I also, that is the index also. Now I want to include the index inside ID. Okay, so let's do this and let's add I over here. Okay, so that will add an I. So let's save it, and I think I have done some mistake. Let's find out in the console what is going wrong. Missing argument list. Okay, so something I have done wrong. Okay, so the function, I forgot to close the function. Now it's fine. So now everything works like before, but if I do an inspect on the checkbox, you can see I also get an ID now. Okay, so ID of 0. Then in this second one, the ID should be 1, and the third one, the ID should be 2. Okay, so now once I have the ID of the array, so now it will be very easy for me to uh, toggle the status. Okay, so I can come over here and come back to the event listener where I'm trying to enable or disable the checkbox, right? To change the status of the checkbox. So all I have to do here is I just have to find out the attribute. Okay, so I will, let me think. So I will do to-dos and I will get the target.id. So whatever is the ID and that element's status, I'm going to update it to complete. Okay, but I can do that only when it is checked. Okay, so let me just cut this and let's check if it is checked. So e dot target dot checked. If it is true, I will make it complete. If it is false, I will make it pending. Okay, so that's it. So that uh, completes my status updation. Now again, you can see I am changing the to-dos array, but whenever the to-dos array changes, immediately I will have to do two things. First of all, I have to uh, render all the to-dos so that it gets reflected over there. Okay, so I can run this command, and after that I can do the calculate to-do status also. Okay, so let's save it and come back. So everything is working in the same fashion, but if I select, now you can see how the things work. Okay, so now the things are working. It right now it looks the same, but behind the scene it is using the arrays, this particular array to keep the track of which elements are checked and which elements are not checked. Okay, so let us add a new element and you can see everything is working perfectly. Okay, now next, still these things are not persistent. Okay, the reason why we are doing everything like this is so that once everything is in an object or an array, then we can save it in a local storage, and retrieve it whenever we want. Okay, so let's we will reach there, but once let's finish up handling all the things. Okay, now next, basically what I'm trying to do over here is wherever there is a direct DOM manipulation, I'm trying to remove it and replace it with the array manipulation. Okay, so now you can see we have changed the add to do item element. Okay, we have changed the click event of the checkbox. Now one thing is left is double click event. So whenever I double click, again you can see I'm directly changing the DOM. Okay, I don't want that. So what I want is whenever I do that, the same logic I'm going to apply, and I want to remove that particular element, that particular uh, key from the particular array. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So all you have to do is again we can remove this particular whatever we are trying to do, and all we have to do is let's get the element. Okay, so this is the, so we have to use something called as splice. Okay, so we will select this to do's dot splice, and the splice parameter expects two things. The first one is the index, or the starting index. So the starting index we will get from e.target.id. Okay, the target.id of that particular checkbox. Okay, so first we have to get that checkbox, right? So how to get that checkbox? We will have to first get the tr. Okay, and then inside that tr we will try to find the checkbox id from the checkbox, right? So let's try that. So let's get the tr. Let tr is equal to e dot target dot parent node. Okay, so I've got this parent node, that is parent tr. Now inside that tr I will have to go to tr dot first element child. Okay, so let's console log and find out what we get for this. Okay, so console log and let's find out. So inspect console, and if we try to check this, okay, wait, let me just bring it to the side. Okay, so now if I check anything, nothing is happening. Let's see why. Okay, sorry, I wanted to double click. Okay, sorry, I had to double click. So if I double click, you will see I'm getting the td, and inside that I'm getting the checkbox. Okay, so I am traversing inside, and again I have to go inside one element. So let's go inside one element, refresh, come back and double click. So that gives me this, and let's do id on that, and let's see what do I get now. Okay, so let's come back and double click, and I get id 0 for this, id 1 for this, id 2 for this. Perfect. Okay, so I'm getting the ids. So now we are ready to delete that particular element. Okay, so let's enable the splice command, and the first parameter will be the id, comma, how many elements that you want to delete. I just want to delete one element, so I'm putting 1. And again, remember, whenever we change the to-dos, we should always run the render to-do function to update it on the table. Okay, Let's save it. Now let's try it out. Double click and it works. Okay, and I can double click and change it. Perfect. So I think everything is working, and we have converted all the functions into uh, this except the calculate to do status. Okay, right now the to do status is working based on DOM query. Okay, so I don't want that to happen. So instead of that, let's rewrite the entire code with the help of, so I can remove this now. I don't want that. Okay, and I have to dos with me. So this object has all the to dos, and I will get single to do at a time. Okay, and then whenever a to do is found, I'm going to increment the total. Then I'm going to check to do dot status. So if the status is equal to complete, then I'm going to do complete plus plus. And I don't think this setting the attribute is required, because we are handling the checked property from here. Okay, so from the rendering itself we are handling it, so no problems there. And once we do that, then we will be needing this to update the status of the small tag. So rest everything is perfect, I think. Let's save it and see if everything still works. Yes, it works. Perfect. So now only thing left to make it persistent. Still it is not persistent. If I add something and refresh, everything goes away. Okay, so now to make this persistent, all we have to do is save this into the local storage. Okay, so to save it, all we have to do is whenever the whenever we run the render to do function, we we will also save the contents to the what do you say, to the local storage. Okay, so let's come to the render to do function. So we are having this, and here let's create a new function called save to storage. Okay, so I'm saving to storage. I'm saving to storage, and the way I save to storage is simple. There is nothing much. I am just going to do local storage dot set item. Okay, and the key is going to be to dos, and the value is going to be Json dot stringify to dos. Okay, so this will stringify the array and save it inside the local storage. Okay, so let's see if it really works. Okay, and now let's go back to our console, go to application, and you can see obviously we have not called this function yet, so we have to call it. So now to call it, we can call it separately down, but the render function is always running, so it's better we will just add this save to storage option whenever we try to render the function. Okay, so we will, whenever we render, I'm going to save it to the storage also. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so once we do that, now if we open the console, go to application, and you can see my entire thing is stored inside, entire to do is stored inside the to do's local storage. Okay, so now everything is perfect, everything is getting updated. So let me show you whether it is really getting updated or not. Okay, so let's go to application local storage. Okay, so let's select drink milk and make it complete. You can see here also the status becomes complete. Okay, so everything is working. Let's check if breakfast becomes complete. So if I make the breakfast complete, that also works. And now if I remove eat lunch by double clicking, you can see that also gets removed. Perfect. So everything is working, but still if I refresh, everything goes away. The reason is I am storing it to the local storage, but then I'm never retrieving it back. Okay, so for that I will have to now you can see just for testing purposes I have added this particular dummy data, right? But after running this particular dummy data, we should actually get the data from the local storage. Okay, so let's create another function for that. Function get to do's from storage. Okay, so that is the function that I'm going to use, and it is going to be very similar function, but I'm just going to do to do's is equal to, instead of set item I'm going to do get item. Okay, and then the key that I'm going to access is going to be to do's, and this is going to return a string, but I don't want a string, I want an array. So I just have to do json dot parse the string. Okay, so I'm going to convert the string into JSON, JavaScript array, and then it will be stored inside the to-dos. Okay, so once that is done, next I want to call this function. Okay, so I will call this function as soon as this variable is initialized. So let's call it over here. Okay, and let's see. Now if I remove this, if I make the checkbox checked, and now if I refresh, the items are saved. Okay, so I have this particular checkbox checked. If I make all of them checked, and if I refresh, the contents are saved. Okay, if I want to add a new task, time to sleep, and add that task and refresh, you can see the task still remains uh, in the list. Okay, so I can remove any task I want, I can refresh, and you can see still it works. Okay, and the best part is if I copy the link, I will close the browser. Okay, and open a new tab and open it, you can see still everything is preserved. Okay, so we have successfully persisted our data using local storage. Now this is stored inside the local storage of that particular browser. Okay, so if you open it in an incognito mode and open it, you can see you will get an empty data because there is nothing. So we can start add, and okay, so now here you can see we are having a problem. Okay, so there is some kind of a problem. Let's find out what is that problem. Let's go to the console. Okay, so the to-dos is not iterable. Okay, so that is what that is what the error I'm getting. Okay, so let's come to the get to-dos option. Okay, now the reason why it is happening is if you go to inspect and go to application, you can see when you start the application for the first time, there is no to-dos key. Okay, so when there is no to-dos key, and you retrieve something from the local storage, there will be nothing returned back. So that will be, a completely undefined statement. So if that is the case, let us debug what is exactly happening. So let's do a console.log and find out. Okay, so what this is returning. Okay, so let's do an inspect and find out. So you can see it is returning null. Okay, so if it is returning null, then what we should do is, okay, so let's do an if statement. If, okay, if it is equal to null, so if it is equal to null, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do todos is equal to an empty array. Okay, so it's going to start from an empty array, else it is going to do this. Okay, so now let us see if still the error occurs or not. So there is no error, so that is solved. Now let's add some content so everything works. I can add few more contents, and now if I refresh, everything is still there. Okay, and we can check it, everything is working perfectly. Okay, so finally we have finished this particular to do application, and we have persisted the data. Let's delete everything and start fresh. uh, Create to do app. Okay, so that is my first task and I have completed it successfully. Okay, okay guys, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something about this, and I will be creating more such videos to explain you how you can use JavaScript for creating wonderful applications like this. See you till then. uh, Thank you very much.